Hi, AT from CNC at Home. I came across a really interesting sign and wanted to do it. Wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I eventually decided I'm going to do it in the miniature format. It's going to be as a business card. It's kind of a funny ham radio related thing. To get it to fit on a business card, I'm going to have to change its aspect ratio. And I want to use LightBurn's Print and Cut to do that because I'm lazy. I don't want to measure it. I don't want to measure my business card blank. None of that. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring up the image and we're going to do some print and cut magic, hopefully. And this will look really cool. So let's bring that image in. Alright, here's the image brought into LightBurn. It says, caution, radio frequency hazard. RF has been proven to be addictive. RF stands for radio frequency. It's a fun play on words. The original one, this gray color, is actually yellow. I'm going to do this on a purple business card. Why purple, you ask? Great question. It's because I have a bunch of them and I have no other use for them. So I'm going to do it on purple. Okay, to do this, I'm going to first change this to vector drawing. So I'm going to select the image, right click it, and do a trace. This should trace real nicely because it is a very clean image. That looks very good. So let's go ahead and click OK. That looks great. Yeah. So let's go ahead and put this, just going to stick this down in the lower left-hand corner. Now that's really all there is to this part of it. Oh, I should set my material here. So that's where do we have cardstock business cards, kind of the pinkish one. It's going to be fill. We'll assign that to our layer. That should all be set. Nothing fancy there. Right? Nope. Yeah, that's the laser we're using. Make sure I'm using the right laser. What we'll want to do is put a couple registration marks on here so that we can select them for doing our print and cut. So let's just go to a tool layer, do a circle, just make, don't make an oval. Press the shift key so we get an actual circle. I'll come up here, and it doesn't really matter what the size is, it needs to be big enough to see. So I'm going ahead and I'll call it 20. I'll right click on this after I select, there we go. I'll right click and say duplicate. Now I've got two of them. I'll have one on this upper corner and this other one I will put down, there we go, in that corner. What I'm going to do is I'll use those two as my reference points for a print and cut. And then I'm going to tell Print and Cut to scale this to fit my business card. Let's go ahead and go over to the laser and see how that all gets set up. First thing we want to do is put our material down. Looks good enough. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Let me get the camera centered up on that. We'll want to get the laser focused on this, so we'll just bring that over here. Flip the guard up out of the way, get our focusing block, put that on the material, set the laser down on top of that, and we're focused. Get the laser turned on and I will get that zeroed. Now to use the print and cut feature, we need to make sure that we are in absolute coordinates, so we'll go ahead and switch to that. Then we need to move the laser head with our little jog control over to what essentially is the lower left-hand corner, and then we'll also then move it to the upper right. So let me go ahead and get that jogged over. To be able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and pull the shield up out of the way and just have the laser doing its little test dot. We'll bring that over on the material so we can see it. All right. It's a little too far. We'll come down. Okay, we'll go into incremental mode, and I'm going to move 1 millimeter at a time. Okay, a little bit to the left, maybe a couple millimeters. All right, that looks really good. So I'm going to call that my lower left. So under my laser tools, I go under print and cut, and I want to set my first target position. So I need to actually select this. Oh, it is selected. Great. So we'll go ahead and select that as my first position. So it gets a nice circle on it. And we'll go ahead and move our laser over to the other corner. I'm going to step over here, make sure that looks good. I'm going to go just a little bit higher and then over. Nope. Come back down. All right, that'll work for the upper one. Go ahead and select this registration mark, print and cut, second position. One more thing that we need to do then under print and cut is we want to align output to target. If we use the lower option, align output to target, no scaling, it won't resize it at all. Because our business card has a different aspect ratio, this whole thing needs to be squished down or stretched out sideways. So I'm going to go ahead and say align output to targets. If we look at the laser, let's do a quick frame on that to make sure that that's doing what we want. All right, it looked about right. You never know until you do the burn. Let's go ahead and get that started, and fingers crossed that this is doing what we want. It was at this point that I really needed to take a look at what was going on with print and cut. I thought I hadn't defined my upper and lower corners properly, and maybe that's why everything was skewed a little bit. And after doing a couple more experiments, that wasn't the case. Digging into the print and cut feature, I had made a false assumption. For some reason, I thought that it would not only scale size to fit your 2 points, I've also assumed that it would or could change the aspect ratio of your object, and it does not do that, and for good reason. It doesn't really make sense for what print and cut is supposed to do. It will let you put your material on sideways, define your 2 points, and correct for that. But if you need the aspect to change, it's not going to do that. Let's look at the samples, or let's look at my attempts to burn this particular card, and I'll explain what happened on each one of those. Many errors happened, not only with the print and cut. I had an issue with the laser head focusing wasn't tightened down, so the laser emitter kept getting closer and closer and eventually struck the material. I also had the air assist blowing, and that was moving the material around as I was trying to cut. Many things. Let's take a look at what I've got going on here. Here's the first one that I did, and I could see that this edge was coming off, and that's why I just assumed that I hadn't defined my 2 corners properly. So I burned another one. This one I changed the parameters so it would burn very quickly, and again, same thing, it's twisted on here. And my assumption was I wasn't defining my corners properly until I looked at the corners. This corner and this corner are right where they're supposed to be. So what's going wrong? Why is this tipped sideways? Again, I'm thinking I did something wrong with print and cut. Let's take a look at the next one. So here's the next one, and the exact same thing is happening here. So I just stopped it. I knew something was wrong. I started thinking through it and realized it's not affecting my aspect ratio, and that's why it's turning. It is fitting these 2 points right where they're supposed to be, but to get that to fit, it's having to go little kitty wampus. Then the next thing I decided to do was forget using print and cut. Let's just use tried and true. Let's get this squared up on the material and resize this. I brought my template on. I put the image in there. I changed its aspect ratio to get filled. And as it's going along, smash. The laser emitter hit the material and started moving it around. Let me throw a video up of that. I think I have some video footage of that. So that didn't work. So I had to start over again. So here's what happened on the next one. Looks perfectly fine, except for all of this down here. What was happening, again, I think I've got video of this. I'll put it up there. As the laser was going back, the material kept moving up because the air assist was blowing on this and making this travel. Eventually it caught, and then the rest of this did it. But by then this had moved, not working correctly. So I used some masking tape. I taped this down from underneath, and this turned out really well. The only thing that I could say was bad on that is there's just a little bit of purple showing over here, so it's not quite centered properly, and that's an issue that I was running into as I was burning these. So here's my next attempt. Thought I'd try and be a little more careful. Same kind of thing. I didn't get much of my border here, and I have a little purple showing over here, so I didn't get this centered up quite correctly. Try it again. Exact same thing. It's also a little crooked. So I'm not having good luck. And then as I thought more about this, I'm trying to do something that's very difficult. I'm trying to get this border to be exactly where it needs to be on the material. And the corners of the material are rounded, so I don't have a nice square edge to reference against. I'm having to guess where this and this edge are. So my solution, my final solution that turned out really nicely, is this. I just shrunk the whole sign a little bit so that it would have a little bit of border around it. And this turned out really nicely. This was my final product from this project. I did use the print and cut feature on this once I had resized it, so I could define my corners, so this didn't have to be square in there. That worked like it was supposed to. I did the aspect ratio correction manually within LightBurn, so that was all taken care of. So I don't always do things correctly the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth, or sixth, or seventh, or eighth time. Sometimes the ninth time is the charm. I hope you enjoyed this video and watching me fail my 8 times and eventually getting it right on the 9th time. If you're like me, you learn from your mistakes. And I had plenty of them on this project. It's important to learn from your mistakes. That way you can avoid it in the future. Don't be afraid to fail is another kind of mantra you really need to have. You don't always get stuff right the first time. The more you learn, the better you'll be at getting stuff done the first time, but push yourself. Make sure that you have extra material. I've got plenty of these purple business cards, so I just tried a bunch of things until I got it to work. But I did think about what I was doing to make sure that what I was doing was moving me forward in the process. And eventually I did get one done that looked really cool. So I think this did turn out well. I learned quite a bit in this process. So I'll know better next time what print and cut is meant to do and what it does well and what it doesn't do. So much for my lazy lasering today. I hope you did enjoy this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you like the content of our channel, think about subscribing. That really helps us out. Enjoy doing your CNC at home projects. Oops. This project is fighting me every single chance it gets. I'm going to have to get my board all realigned. Must not have tightened this down well enough when I focused it. Arrgh. It's always something. What we've found is when I put this down, the air assist tends to blow this around a little bit, and the one time I had the laser actually work its way down, so the safety shield also knocked into the card. What I'm going to do is put a little bit of masking tape on the back to hold this in place. This should not affect the burn at all, or the quality. This will be flat enough where we don't need to worry about it. So I'll just put this big piece in the middle, get it nice and flat, and since we're using print and cut, I don't have to have this aligned with anything. We can just put it wherever we want. I would like to use my magnets to hold this down. The problem is I am burning right to the edge of the material and there's no room for the magnets. That's why I'm using the tape method. I'm going to go ahead and get the laser adjusted for my print and cut so that it knows these two corners, and then we'll get this burn done. This is the boring part, so you don't really have to pay too much attention. I'm sure I'll go into fast motion here. Quick check, make sure we're still focused. Should be. And we are. Let's go ahead and start. Have my fingers crossed that it works this time. It should, now that I have my brain set up correctly. One thing that I forgot to add to this particular burn was to outline everything. So I did the fill mode, but I also like coming back and then doing the line right around all the edges. It smooths it out. I'm going to go ahead and run that now. There we go. This turned out fairly well. Oh, it's stuck down there. So when doing the print and cut, it is not going to adjust the aspect ratio of your image. It will resize it according to the points that you pick. So that's an important lesson that I've learned here today, that it just literally is just resizing. It is not doing any kind of scaling on the aspect ratio.